Whoever he is, wherever he works, and whatever he does, at work and play, lives in two distinct Londons. His own private edition and the large, sprawling city he shares with everyone else. A city that caters for his everyday needs, from restaurants to pubs, but very few Londoners know of the history and charm that makes London one of the most fascinating cities in the world. This film is designed to widen your knowledge of London. London began because of the River Thames. It's not a very long river, as rivers go, just a mere 225 miles. But it has a wide and deep estuary that rises and falls some 15 feet, keeping the channel dredged and navigable right into the heart of the city. Now the Romans appreciated this and built their cities on the north bank of the Thames. One of the many bridges that span this mighty river is the majestic Tower Bridge, the gateway to London. It was opened in 1894, taking 8 years and £1 million to build. Its two central leaves rise to a vertical position against the tower to let through the many foreign and British ships in. The Tower of London has dominated the Thames for 25 generations, being the oldest royal fortress palace in the world. It was the Romans who chose the site of the tower and the place for London's first barracks. The yeoman warders, beefeaters as we know them, live here, and among their many duties they act as guides, taking visitors on conducted tours of the tower they know so well. Near the Wakefield Tower lies the Traitor's Gate, used as a landing place for prisoners tried at Westminster. Many well-known names pass through here on their way to prison or the scaffold. The Bloody Tower is aptly named, for here it is believed that the two young princes were murdered. Near the Bloody Tower stands a piece of the original wall, built by Henry III, that was destroyed by German incendiary bombs on the 29th of December, 1940. You can still see the arrow slits through which many a battle was fought. Through one of the arrow slits can be seen the White Tower, built by William the Conqueror. Henry III made it truly a white tower, for he kept the apartments and exterior whitewashed. It is probable that there have always been ravens at the tower, and there is a legend that the tower will fall if it loses its ravens. The birds are therefore carefully guarded. Each bird receives a weekly allowance of horseflesh, and they have their own quarters in a cage by the Langthorne Tower. In the middle of Tower Green is a small square paved with granite. Here stood the scaffold where many people of royal blood were known to have been executed. No fortress would be complete without his cannons, and here are some of the magnificent examples that can be seen in the tower grounds. On leaving the tower, we look to the top of Tower Hill and see Trinity Square. A pleasant garden laid out in the 18th century, a peaceful memorial to the merchant navy and fishing fleets who gave their lives to their country and have no grave but the sea. Their 24,000 names are honoured on these walls. Yet not always was it so peaceful, for a patch of plain paving in the grass marks the site of one of the most tragic spots on English soil, for here stood another scaffold. It has been the scene of 75 executions, the first that of Sir Simon Burley in 1388, and the last that of Simon Fraser, Lord Lovat, in 1747. We find a complete contrast in Whitechapel, the chief Hebrew quarter of London. Here, Jewish stallholders go to great lengths to sell their wares. This is the centre of the great tailoring industry. And although a Jewish area with its many synagogues, Christian England is called to worship by the bells cast in this foundry. One of the most famous bells made here was Big Ben. Every Sunday morning, Middlesex Street becomes Petticoat Lane, which has long been one of the sights of London. Clothes, books, beads, birds, cats, dogs, even hot dogs. Everything is sold here. A few hundred yards away is the church of St. Olave's, which stands on the corner of Seething Lane and Hart Street. This is probably the only churchyard to have such a macabre gateway. Maybe it was because in 5 months during the Great Plague, 326 people were buried here. One night in 1666, a baker at number 25 Pudding Lane went to bed leaving red-hot cinders near the tinder-dry woodwork of his bakery. In a few days there was very little left of the city. This was the start of the Great Fire. Wren's monument is the memorial to this tragic event. It is a fluted pillar of Portland stone, which took 6 years to build. 50,000 people a year climb the 311 black marble steps which wind round the middle. 6 people have thrown themselves off the monument, and as this kind of death was becoming popular, it became necessary to build a cage at the top. How many of you know that opposite Cannon Street Station once stood the church of St. Swithin's London Stone? It was burnt out during the Blitz in 1941 and demolished in 1963. The London Stone, weather-beaten and worn by the exposure of centuries, was, after renovation, removed in 1742 from the south to the north side of Cannon Street. The stone, now only a fragment of its former self, is believed to have been used by the Romans as a central stone from which mileage was measured. Now it is embedded in the Bank of China, which stands on the original site. All that remains of the church is its gardens at the end of St. Swithin's Lane. And from lanes to streets, one of the most important streets in medieval London was Cheapside, with handsome shops and rich people. Golden Cheapside, we might call it, for there were over 50 goldsmiths here in Tudor days. And to remind us that it was an important shopping centre, just look at the names of some of the streets that run off Cheapside. Looking down it from St. Paul's, we see the graceful tower of St. Mary le Bow, known throughout the world that every true Cockney is born within the sound of the famous Bow bells, and how they ring out like a song of hope to Dick Whittington, so that he turned his steps to become Lord Mayor of London. Centuries before this, here in Bun Hill Fields, men were living in pile dwellings at the time Christ was born in Bethlehem, and stone tools have been found that were dropped even long before then. When the ground was closed in 1832, 123,000 bodies were registered as buried here, but only 5,000 were discovered. Among these were the graves of 4 famous men. John Bunyan, who gave us the first great English story, Pilgrim's Progress. William Blake, who gave us that beautiful anthem, Jerusalem. Isaac Watts, who gave us the hymn, O God, our help in ages past. And Daniel Defoe, who gave us the book, loved by everyone, Robinson Crusoe. On the brighter side, just off Clerkenwell Road, is one of London's most historical gateways, with memories of great days of chivalry. It is the gateway of the ancient priory of the Knights of St. John of Jerusalem. Today, it is the headquarters of the St. John's Ambulance, the Knights of the Hospital, now caring for the sick. In this house, just across the river, lived one of London's greatest architects, for a plaque on the wall tells us that Christopher Wren lived here whilst he was building St. Paul's Cathedral. It was a miracle that St. Paul's was ever built, for Wren had all the powers against him when he said that the old St. Paul's was in danger of collapsing. His opportunity came with 2 calamities, the Great Plague in 1665 and the Great Fire in 1666, which reduced London to little more than a heap of ashes. Wren was made Surveyor General for rebuilding it, and St. Paul's was to dominate the city. The great architect stood amongst the charred ruins of the old cathedral and asked a workman to bring him a stone to mark the centre of his new church. The man brought him a piece of gravestone on which was engraved, Resurgam, meaning, I shall rise again. You can see this word beneath the carved phoenix above the great south door. It took Wren and his associates 35 years to build the cathedral. During this time, St. Paul's was almost completely hidden from view by a forest of scaffolding. And what scaffolding? For they were more like telegraph poles compared to the metal tubular kind we know today. Once again, St. Paul's beauty is marred by scaffolding. But this time, St. Paul's is undergoing its first major cleaning, which should be completed during 1968. Here you see some of the intricate stonework, including these 3 beautiful cherubs with tears on their cheeks that were revealed when the grime of ages was removed. These pillars mark the entrance to this mighty cathedral, and through the ages people have flocked to St. Paul's to give thanks for great occasions and to honour their dead. In a small churchyard behind St. Paul's stands a memorial column erected to indicate the site of Paul's Cross, the open-air pulpit of olden times from which priests delivered terrifying sermons, often by order of the monarch. Even our historians are uncertain when the pulpit was erected, but it is believed to have been in 1259. As we leave, spare a thought for the tall, lonely figure in stone, the figure of the second founder of Christianity, St. Paul the Apostle, patron saint of this proud cathedral. Looking down from the top of St. Paul's, you can see Fleet Street. Its name comes from the old River Fleet, now dwindled into an underground drain. Here you can see the old standing alongside the new, the solid-looking Daily Telegraph building, and the huge glass house of the Daily Express. For 700 years, it has been Fleet Street, transforming the face of the nation and setting millions of people reading and thinking. Day and night, week after week, generation after generation, Fleet Street thunders without ceasing, turning out its newspapers every morning so they are ready for 1 million breakfast tables. There are two churches that belong to Fleet Street. The first is St. Bride's, and ever since Wynkyn de Worde, London's first printer, set up the Caxton Press alongside the church, it has been known as the Printers' Cathedral. The crypt of St. Bride's holds nearly 2,000 years of history, for when restoring the church after a bombing raid in 1940, an exploration of the Wren foundations revealed the remains of 5 other churches and a piece of Roman pavement. The body of Wynkyn de Worde is also buried here. The second church of Fleet Street is St. Dunstan's. It is worth noting that the St. Dunstan's clock, purchased in 1671, was the first clock in London to have a minute hand. Buried in this church is the Bishop Oglethorpe, who crowned Queen Elizabeth I, whose statue stands so near to his grave. It is one of the most interesting statues in London, for it is the only one to have been made in her lifetime and one of the few complete statues to have survived the Great Fire. St. Dunstan's itself narrowly escaped the Great Fire, which ended just 3 doors away at number 85 Fleet Street. Not far away in Holborn are some of the oldest houses in London, dating from the Elizabethan period. Their projecting timbered fronts form the street side of Staples Inn. The inn has, for a long time, been connected with the law, but it owes its name to an earlier use when it served as a kind of custom house, where wool was weighed and the dues upon it collected. For those who are stirred with wondrous stories from the past, here in the British Museum are things that have survived the passing of years. They have come from every corner of the earth, and men have risked their lives so that we all may see. The British Museum was opened to the public in 1759. In its many rooms are significant objects and remains from many continents, many centuries, fragments of lost empires and ancient half-forgotten cultures, statues of gods and kings and sacred beasts, standing alongside the crude implements of early man. For the young and old, the Egyptian mummy room holds a macabre fascination. The Egyptians used the process of mummification that had been in practice for thousands of years. Firstly, the bodies are cleansed of all the internal parts, just leaving the skin and bones. Then they are soaked in an oil for 70 days and wrapped in a fine linen. The Egyptians became so competent in this art that they even mummified their animals. For those who could not afford the expense of mummification, many were buried in baskets, like this man who died approximately 3,000 years before Christ was born. This case contains a grave from the banks of the Nile. In it is the oldest man to be seen anywhere on this earth. He was found surrounded by pots and flints, his body naked but complete. In the spring of 1900, he was unpacked in the British Museum. He lay on a table all weekend, but when Monday morning came, the old man had lost the tip of his finger, and to this day it is still a mystery as to what happened to him when he lay waiting to be put back among his pots and flints. A piece of Egypt's history which was too big to be exhibited in the museum was Cleopatra's Needle, which stands on the embankment. This great column is 70 feet high, weighs 166 tons, and was first hewn in about 1450 BC. In 1875, Sir Eramus Wilson gave £10,000 to bring it to England. It was cased in an iron cylinder 100 feet long and towed by steam tug. It was abandoned during a storm in the Bay of Biscay, recovered and erected on this spot in 1878. Under its foundations are buried a Bible and the coins and the papers of the day it was erected. The damaged patches at the base are the marks of a German bomb. The two bronze sphinx that stand guard either side were added many years later. Just along from Cleopatra's Needle, there are 4 boats. HMS President and HMS Chrysanthemum are naval training ships and headquarters of the London Division of the Royal Naval Volunteer Reserve. The Wellington is used by the Company of the Master Mariners, and the Discovery is a memorial to Captain Scott and his comrades who died in the attempt to be the first to reach the South Pole. Queen Boadicea's statue stands on the corner of the Embankment and Westminster Bridge, but it was here in King's Cross in 62 AD that Boadicea was defeated by the Romans. The district was then known as Battle Bridge. She is believed to be buried under the departure platform number 10 at King's Cross Station. This street in Soho has a certain claim to fame, for in number 51, Frith Street, Mozart lived as a boy. And here at number 22, John Logie Baird demonstrated the world's first television. It is fitting that television should have been born so close to Piccadilly Circus, the heart of London's entertainment. Enthroned in the middle is a delightful statue of Cupid. It is Sir Alfred Gilbert's Eros, set up in memory of the Earl of Shaftesbury, who tried to bring a little more brightness into the lives of children. By night, Piccadilly Circus is one of the most wondrous sights in the world. The advertisements start to flash and wink in a kaleidoscope of colour, bringing together a ceaseless crowd of pleasure-seeking people from all over the world. And so ends the first part of a film that was designed to bring you a greater understanding of the historical value that makes London the most fascinating city in the world.